The table went silent after Rose laughed at me. Not a small laugh, not an awkward little sound she could pretend was nothing. She laughed like I had just said something childish. We were at dinner with two other couples, talking about what happens after marriage. Bank accounts, savings, wedding costs, all the boring things people ignore until they become problems. I had said, before we combine anything, I think we should meet with a neutral financial planner. Rose put her wine glass down and smiled like she felt sorry for me. Then she said the line that ended our engagement before either of us knew it. My ex is smarter than you, that's why I asked him for financial advice. Nobody moved. One of my friends stared at his plate. His wife looked at Rose like she had slapped me. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I kept my face still. Rose rolled her eyes. Don't be sensitive, Joel. You're smart at your stuff. Scott is smart at money. My stuff. That was what she called my work, my career, my life. I was a systems engineer. I was not flashy. I did not post about investments. I did not say words like leverage while ordering brunch. I had a retirement account, an emergency fund, no credit card debt, and a car with a weird clicking sound I kept ignoring because the mechanic told me it was not urgent. Rose loved people who sounded rich. She loved finance influencers, expensive notebooks, clean charts, and phrases like opportunity cost. She talked about money like it was a language she wanted people to hear her speaking. And Scott, her ex-boyfriend, was fluent. At least, that was what she believed. Scott had dated Rose for 3 years before me. She always said they broke up because they were too similar, which should have scared me more than it did. He worked at a boutique wealth management firm downtown. Rose described him like he was the secret brain behind every rich person in the city. But later, I learned Scott was not a certified financial planner. He was not a portfolio manager. He was not some genius moving billions around before breakfast. He was a client acquisition guy with polished shoes, a watch that looked louder than his car, and a LinkedIn page stuffed with words like legacy, alpha, and bespoke. At first, I tried to be mature about it. I did not care that Rose still spoke to an ex. I never believed a healthy relationship meant deleting everyone you ever dated. If she wanted to ask him a basic question about a mutual fund, fine. But it did not stay basic. Soon, every decision became a Scott decision. When we looked at wedding venues, Rose said, "Let me ask Scott if this deposit structure makes sense." When our apartment lease came up for renewal, she said, "Scott thinks the rental market might soften." When I said the honeymoon budget was getting too high, she said, "Scott says experiences can be assets if they expand your network." I remember just staring at her. "Rose," I said, "we are going to a beach, not a trade conference." She gave me that soft, disappointed look I had started to hate. "You always make things sound small." No, I made them sound real. That was the difference. After that dinner, I did not fight with her. I did not ask her to apologize in the car. I did not bring up Scott while we brushed our teeth, or while she changed into pajamas like nothing had happened. I just replayed the sentence in my head. My ex is smarter than you, that's why I asked him for financial advice. It was not only the comparison. It was the ease of it. Rose had taken the man she used to love, placed him above the man she was about to marry, and expected me to accept my assigned seat. So I became very interested in Scott's advice. Not angry. Interested. A week later, Rose was sitting on the sofa with her laptop open, scrolling through a glossy PDF with gold accents and smooth stock photos of people smiling at glass office tables. I asked, "What's that?" She said, "Scott sent me an opportunity." That word made something in my chest tighten. What kind of opportunity? She kept her eyes on the screen. Private credit. It's not for everyone. He said I might be able to get in because of his firm's preferred access. I sat down slowly. Get in with what money? She hesitated just long enough. Some of my savings. Wedding savings? She closed the laptop halfway. Not all of it. That was not an answer. I kept my voice calm. What's the lockup period? She blinked. What are the fees? Her mouth tightened. What happens if we need the cash for final venue payments? She leaned back like I had bored her on purpose. Scott already explained it. Great. Then what did he say? You're doing that thing. What thing? Where you pretend not to understand so you can make it sound stupid. I stared at her. I'm asking normal questions, Rose. Quote. She shook her head. No, you're threatened. You always do this when Scott knows something you don't. There it was again. That little step down. That reminder that I was useful, stable, dependable, but not impressive. I could have argued. Instead, I said, okay. She looked surprised. Okay? Yeah. If Scott explained it, then I'm sure the documents are clear. She narrowed her eyes, but she did not answer. 2 days later, Rose asked me to fix her printer. That was how she handled technology. If her laptop did not obey her within 7 seconds, she became helpless and annoyed at the same time. I fixed the printer, but while I was at her desk, I saw the PDF sitting in her downloads folder. Right there. Not hidden. Not private. Just open, because Rose assumed I would not understand it anyway. I did not copy anything that was not already shared with me. I did not hack her. I did not go through secret messages. But I did look at the document she had been ready to put our wedding money into. And then I started reading. The first pages looked beautiful. Smiling couples, clean charts, words about access and stability. The middle pages were less beautiful. High fees. Limited liquidity. Early withdrawal language that basically said, good luck. Risk disclosures that went on and on. Then, buried deep in the document, I found the part that made my jaw clench. Scott's firm could receive compensation for placing clients into the product. I read that line 3 times. Scott was not giving Rose friendly advice. He was selling. The next night, I sat at our kitchen table after Rose went to bed and made a spreadsheet. Then another one. Then a third one. I did not make them because I wanted to win an argument. I made them because numbers calm me down. Numbers do not roll their eyes. Numbers do not call you insecure when you ask where your future wife's money is going. The first spreadsheet compared Scott's opportunity to boring index funds over different time periods. The second listed every fee, penalty, lockup, and conflict I could find. The third one was my favorite. I titled it, Advice from Scott versus Outcomes for Rose. That one took longer, because once I looked back, I saw the pattern. Scott had told Rose not to pay off a high-interest credit card too fast, because cash flexibility matters. He had encouraged her to lease a more expensive car because image affects earning potential. He had told her to keep money in a low-yield account connected to his firm because it gave her relationship status. Relationship status. For money. The more I looked, the colder I got. Not because Scott was a cartoon villain, that would have been easier. He was worse. He was charming. Careful. Plausible. He wrapped bad ideas in fancy words until Rose felt smart for repeating them. And Rose wanted to feel smart around him. That was the part that hurt. The wedding budget dinner was already on the calendar. Rose's parents, Paul and Angela, were helping pay for a large part of the wedding. My mother, Diana, was contributing too. We were all supposed to meet at a nice restaurant to finalize the numbers before more deposits became non-refundable. A few days before the dinner, I said, I still think we should have an independent financial planner review everything. Rose sighed without looking up from her phone. Joel. One meeting. We do not need a stranger judging our finances. But we need Scott? She looked at me then. Scott understands this stuff. I nodded. Okay, then invite him. Her expression changed. What? Invite Scott to the budget dinner. For the first time in weeks, Rose looked pleased with me. That's actually mature of you. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because she thought I was surrendering. She thought I had finally accepted that Scott belonged in the room. And in a way, she was right. Scott did belong in the room. He belonged there with Paul watching, Angela listening, and my folder sitting beside my chair. The night of the dinner, Scott arrived like he was walking into a room that already owed him respect. Tailored blazer, no tie, expensive loafers, perfect smile. Rose stood up too fast when she saw him. Scott, you made it. Wouldn't miss it, he said. He shook Paul's hand with both hands. He kissed Angela's cheek. He gave my mother a warm smile. Then he looked at me. Joel, good to see you. Scott. Rose sat down beside me and said to the table, Scott is basically our financial advisor. Scott chuckled. I wouldn't say advisor, more like someone who helps people see the bigger picture. I looked down at my water glass. That was interesting. He liked the respect of the title, but not the responsibility. For the first part of dinner, I barely spoke. Scott talked about markets, interest rates, inflation, and why cash was emotionally comforting but financially lazy. Rose smiled at him like he was teaching a private class. Paul looked impressed. Angela was polite. My mother kept glancing at me. She knew me well enough to know my silence was not peace. It was preparation. The appetizers came. Scott ordered like a man who wanted everyone to notice he knew the menu. Then Paul leaned forward and asked the question that opened the door. So, Scott, for the wedding fund, would you keep that in savings until final payments are due? Scott leaned back. Well, cash is safe, but safety has a cost. Rose nodded at once. I asked, what cost? Scott smiled at me. Opportunity cost. I nodded. Can you quantify it? For half a second, his face did not move. Then he said, That depends on the broader strategy. Of course, I said. What strategy applies to wedding funds needed within 12 months? Rose touched my arm under the table. Not gently. A warning. Scott gave a soft laugh. I think what Joel is asking is a little narrow. I reached down beside my chair and opened my folder. Not a laptop, not a phone. A folder. Printed pages, tabs, highlighted sections, copies. Very dramatic, very satisfying. I slid the first page across the table to Paul. This is the private credit product Scott recommended Rose consider for her wedding savings. Rose went pale. Joel, what are you doing? I kept my eyes on Paul. These are the fees. This is the lockup language. This is the section explaining that early withdrawal may be limited or unavailable. And this is the disclosure that says Scott's firm may receive compensation. Paul picked up the paper. Angela leaned toward him. Scott's smile changed. It did not disappear. It just tightened. That's a very simplistic reading, he said. I looked at him. Great. Explain the complex version. Nobody spoke. Scott adjusted his cuffs. Well, products like this are part of a holistic approach to alternative exposure. You have to consider the client journey and long-term objectives. I nodded. Is Rose your client? His eyes flicked toward Rose. Not formally. Are you licensed to give her personalized investment advice? His jaw shifted. I'm not giving personalized investment advice. Then why did you tell her this product was a strong fit for her goals? Rose whispered, Stop. But Paul had already looked up. What do you mean he told her that? I pulled out the email. Rose had forwarded it to me 2 weeks earlier when she wanted me to print something for her. She had forgotten what was attached to the thread. I placed it in front of Paul. The email says, This would be a strong fit for you based on your goals. Angela picked it up first. Her eyes moved across the page. Then her face changed. Not loud anger, not shock. Something worse. Clear understanding. Scott said that was conversational. She asked for my opinion as a friend. I said, as a friend, did you clearly tell her your firm could make money if she invested? It's in the disclosure. Angela looked at him. Page 47? Scott opened his mouth, then closed it. Paul took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. When he put them back on, he looked directly at Scott. Would your firm make money if Rose put her savings into this? Scott said, The firm may receive compensation, yes. Paul's face turned a deep red. And were you going to say that plainly? Scott's voice got cooler. Again, it's disclosed. That was the moment he lost the room. Because normal people do not think page 47 of a glossy PDF counts as honesty. Rose pushed her chair back. This is humiliating. I finally looked at her. No, Rose. Humiliating was when you told our friends your ex was smarter than me, so that's why you asked him for financial advice. Her eyes filled with anger. You waited to do this in front of my parents? I asked you to meet with a neutral planner. You refused. I asked basic questions. You called me insecure. You said Scott knew better. Scott stood. I don't think this is productive. My mother spoke for the first time. Funny, it was productive when everyone thought you were the expert. Scott looked at her, then away. Paul set the papers down with slow care. Sit down, Scott. Scott did not sit. I'm not going to be cross-examined at dinner. I said, you were happy to advise at dinner. Rose snapped. Joel, enough. I looked at her then, really looked. Her face was not embarrassed because Scott had misled her. She was embarrassed because I had made him look small. That told me more than any spreadsheet could. Scott left before the main course. Rose went after him to the front of the restaurant. Through the window, I saw them talking near the curb. She moved her hands fast. He kept looking away from her, like she had become a problem he needed to manage. When Rose came back, her makeup was fine, but her eyes were sharp. You had no right. Paul said her name once. Rose. She stopped. He tapped the papers. Did you understand any of this before tonight? Rose did not answer. Angela asked, Did Scott explain the fees? Rose crossed her arms. He explained the bigger picture. Paul's voice hardened. That is not an answer. Dinner ended early. No dessert. No warm hugs in the parking lot. No jokes about seating charts or flowers. On the drive home, Rose stared out the window. Finally, she said, You enjoyed that. I kept both hands on the wheel. No. You made me look stupid. No. I asked the questions you should have asked before risking your wedding savings. She turned toward me. You are so jealous of him. There was. Even after everything. Even after the email, the fees, the disclosure, the silence. Still, somehow, the problem was my jealousy. I said, Rose, do you understand that he may have been using your trust to sell you something? She laughed once, but it shook. You don't care about that. You care that I respect him. That one landed because part of it was true. I did care. I cared that the woman I planned to marry could sit beside me while another man shaped our future. I cared that she defended him faster than she defended me. I cared that I had become the safe choice while Scott remained the exciting authority. I said, I care that you mocked me in public and trusted him in private. She went quiet. The next morning, I did not text her. I emailed her. That sounds cold, but I needed a record. I needed my words to stay exactly as I wrote them. I told Rose I was postponing the wedding indefinitely. I told her we needed premarital counseling. I told her we needed to meet with an independent, certified financial planner before combining anything. And I told her I would not marry someone who turned every serious decision into a chance for her ex to outrank me. She called me within 3 minutes. I did not answer. Then came the texts. You're being dramatic. You embarrassed me. You ambushed Scott. You made my parents think I'm helpless. I replied once. I gave Scott the chance to explain the advice you trusted more than me. She did not respond for 2 hours. Then she sent, You always have to be right. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because I did not feel right. I felt tired. For the next 2 weeks, our apartment became a quiet war zone. Rose slept, turned away from me. She took calls in the bathroom. She went to her parents' house twice, and came back with red eyes and a hard mouth. I did not beg. That surprised her, I think. Maybe she expected me to fold. Maybe she expected an apology because I had disturbed the version of our life where she got to insult me, then call my reaction insecurity. One evening, I came home and found 2 suitcases by the door. Rose was in the bedroom, packing jewelry into a small travel case. So that's it? I asked. She did not look up. You made your point. No, I set a boundary. She zipped the case too hard. You ruined our engagement because of your ego. I leaned against the doorway. No, the engagement cracked when you laughed at me in front of our friends. It broke when you defended him after he could not answer basic questions. She looked at me then, and for a second, I saw fear under the anger. But pride covered it fast. I hope being right keeps you warm. I almost said something cruel. I wanted to. Instead, I moved out of the doorway so she could pass. She left that night. The apartment felt bigger after the door closed. Not peaceful, just empty. For 2 days, I did nothing about Scott. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate cereal over the sink like a man in a commercial for bad decisions. I thought about the dinner again and again. Then I opened Scott's firm's website. Their public page had a section about ethics, client-first values, transparency, trust. All the shiny words men like Scott used when they wanted people to stop reading closely. I did not post online. I did not write a fake review. I did not call him names. I sent one factual email to the compliance department. I included the product PDF. I included the email where Scott said the fund was a strong fit for Rose's goals. I explained that Rose was not formally his client. I explained their prior romantic relationship. I explained that he had discussed product-specific recommendations socially while the firm stood to receive compensation. Then I asked one question. Does this match your policies? That was all. I did not know what would happen. For a few weeks, nothing did. Rose blocked me first, then unblocked me, then sent one long message about how I had weaponized paperwork. I did not answer. Then one afternoon, a mutual friend sent me a screenshot. Scott's LinkedIn had changed. He no longer worked at the boutique wealth management firm. No announcement, no grateful farewell post, no after 3 amazing years message. Just gone. A few days later, I heard that Scott was furious with Rose. He blamed her for letting private conversations get out. He stopped taking her calls soon after. That was the part Rose never expected. Scott enjoyed being her genius when she admired him. He did not enjoy being accountable when the room asked for numbers. About a month later, Paul asked me to meet for coffee. I almost said no. I thought he wanted to defend his daughter or ask me to reconsider. Instead, he sat across from me in a quiet coffee shop, put both hands around his cup, and said, "I owe you an apology." I did not know what to say. He told me he had reviewed more of Rose's finances. Nothing illegal had happened, but several choices had been bad, expensive, and wrapped in Scott's advice. A car lease she did not need. A credit card balance she should have paid down. Money sitting in a low-yield account because Scott made it sound exclusive. Paul looked older than he had at the dinner. "I'm sorry she spoke to you that way," he said. "You did not deserve it." That hit harder than I expected. Because I had not realized how badly I needed one person from her world to say I had not imagined the disrespect. 3 months later, Rose emailed me. The subject line was just my name. She said she had been confused. She said Scott had manipulated her. She said she was overwhelmed by wedding pressure and wanted to talk. Maybe Scott did manipulate her a little. But he did not make her laugh at me at that dinner with our friends. He did not make her compare me to him. He did not make her call me insecure every time I asked a reasonable question. So I wrote back one sentence. "I hope you find someone whose intelligence you respect." Then I blocked her. The last I heard, Rose had moved back in with her parents to rebuild her savings. Scott was selling commercial insurance and posting quotes about resilience. As for me, I am still not a finance guy. I still drive the same car with the same strange clicking sound. I still prefer boring accounts, boring plans, and boring questions that save people from exciting disasters. But I learned something from all of it. I was never trying to be the smartest man in the room. I just needed to know whether the woman beside me still saw me as someone worth listening to. And once her silence, her laughter, and her loyalty to Scott gave me the answer, I stopped arguing for a place in a future that already had someone else's voice in it. So when someone tells you their ex is smarter than you, do not shout. Do not compete. Ask for the numbers. And let the truth speak clearly enough for everyone at the table to hear. If this story pulled you in, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. We'll Was Joel right to expose Scott at dinner, or should he have handled it privately?